I'm looking for people that smell like weeds. No, really, New Birth is the largest land-owning black church in America.
Wow.
And so my position to my deacons is, why aren't we not raising cannabis? I'll be able to bring in black males. They're able to do it legally. I'm teaching them farming.
Oh my God.
I'm helping them to enhance the ecosystem. This is the kind of conversation. So if the guy, black boy in Bankhead said, they growing weed at the church, where do I join?
Yeah.
This is a personal story for me. I used to be a member of New Birth back in the 1990s. I was baptized there while in college. I was also a volunteer within their college campus ministry, so I have a little bit of insight on what that church used to be about, back before Bishop Eddie Long got caught up in money scandals and sex with young men. But my story starts many years prior to that. You see, I was raised Catholic, baptized at age 5, but going to church and doing the Catholic thing was my parents' doing. I did all that stuff because they made me. When I was 12, I confessed Christ for myself, and I started studying the Bible on my own, and then I left the Catholic Church. I started attending a Baptist church, but I still didn't like going. I went because I thought I had to. I thought that's what a Christian was supposed to do. Then one day I saw this church, late at night on public access television during one of those religious shows. It was a Christian hip-hop video, Byron Cage featuring the New Birth Men's Choir. I know the video was blurry, but you can see Bishop Long there in the background. Now looking back on it, it looks kind of lame and a little bit suspect. But I was a kid living in the hood of Detroit when I saw that video, and I can tell you it lit a fire under me. I was like, yeah, that's a man church. I want to go there. And that was a pivotal moment for me because that was the late 90s. And around that time, there was a decade-long battle between the Nation of Islam and the black church over black men. And the nation was just coming off the Million Man March, and they were winning converts left and right. I remember Minister Louis Farrakhan giving speeches in inner cities during that time. And to put all of that in further context, pro-black hip-hop groups like Public Enemy and X-Clan were popping around that time. Spike Lee was at the peak of his career. He was making movies like Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X. People were wearing those Pan-African medallions and Malcolm X hats. So you had this explosion of black cultural expression and masculinity going on. But the Christian church, to its credit, didn't sit back idly by. It was around that time that T.D. Jakes began his Manpower Conference in my hometown in Detroit. And it was also around that time that Bishop Long became the pastor of New Birth. Now, New Birth was a split from a split. They came from a church that broke off from another church, and they broke off from that church. They were the second split from the original split, and they only had a couple of hundred members. So he got there at about 1988, 1989, and immediately he began going after the men in his area with this pro-masculine message.
And the problem today, and the reason why society is like it is because men are being feminized and women are becoming masculine. You cannot say, I was born this way. I don't care what scientists say. If you say you were born this way, then you're saying, God, you're a liar. And I see this thing down here, but I'm going to ignore it. It is the most unattractive thing I ever see when I see women wearing uniforms that men would wear and women fighting to get in the military. So the woman gets converted or perverted to turn towards woman. Why would she turn towards woman? Because she'll turn towards woman because woman is acting like man. And everybody knows it's dangerous to enter and exit. And everybody knows, ladies, if you go to the store and buy this device, it's Memorex. It ain't real. That's the reason why we got sexual immorality. That's the reason why there's a rise in the gay agenda. That is the reason why. Church won't say nothing. It's amazing, church folk. Well, I'm gay. Well, just don't bother me, or you can bother me. That's the only statements. You know what I'm saying? And the Lord said, you're out of order. You've turned the truth into the lie. You can be converted. You were not born that way. Let me pray with you. Let me tell you, don't you be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. Well, I don't know what I am. Tell me, take your clothes down, I'll show you who you are. And God said, everybody in here that knows what's right and ain't practicing, every woman that knows what to do but still want to act like a woman that of the 90s that the world has described, God says, and to every man that knows what God is saying to do and you're still acting like the boys on the corner, God says you deserve death.
Do those talking points sound familiar? It's funny looking back on that clip because I've been following the black sector of the red pill, manosphere, pro-masculines community for about 7 years. And there's always this debate over who started it all. Some say Tommy Sotomayor, others say Patrice O'Neal. But the first time I'd ever heard those talking points was from Bishop Long in the 1990s. But getting back to my point, the black church during that time, from the late 80s to the late 90s, fought for the attention of black men. So fast forward to my senior year of high school, and that Byron Cage video still had a lasting impact on me. So much so that I was laser focused to get to Atlanta, to go to that man church, that masculine church. I didn't even know their name at the time, but I knew they were in Atlanta. But the problem was, I wasn't a high performer in high school. I didn't have the best grades. So I couldn't get into Morehouse, I didn't get into Clark, I didn't even bother applying at Georgia Tech, Georgia State, or Emory. But I got into Morris Brown. So I got there, I joined the church, and it was everything they advertised it to be. Everything you saw in that clip and music video was a common theme for all of Bishop Long's sermons. It was all about men being leaders and builders, which was phenomenal for me because I had never heard that type of preaching. Now I know some of you are saying, maybe some of the ladies, that's misogynistic. As a woman, I would never attend a church like that. Well, to the contrary, you'd be surprised, because women were still the majority of the congregation, at around 60%. So the message resonated with them too. And that shouldn't be a surprise because look at what's going on today in the black manosphere. The fastest growing content creators in that sector since the passing of Kevin Samuels are all female. So women, as well as men, are enthralled by things that are masculine. They loved what Bishop Long was preaching. But getting back to my point, the reason why I was attracted to New Birth, why Bishop Long was able to grow a church from a couple of hundred people into a powerhouse of 26,000 within 10 years, is because of its masculine message. Okay? And while they did have a 60% female membership, 40% of that congregation was male. And that's huge when you consider the fact that the black church today is about 80 to 90% female. Not only that, but the average age of New Birth back in the day was 30. Again, that's another huge accomplishment because today, the average black church attendee is a single woman in her 50s. There are no men, there are no young women there. And looking back on it, as someone who did evangelism for them, men were the primary focus. That's why Long relied so heavily on those pro-masculine talking points, because it worked. Studies have shown that if you get men to come to your church, women and children will naturally follow. Now, the reason why I went into all of that is because I wanted to illustrate the ignorance of Jamal Bryant's statements. I want to create a context as a point of reference. I want you to see what actually worked versus the things that Jamal Bryant thinks will work. So what actually worked was a unique message tailored towards the needs and concerns of black men. That's what transformed New Birth from a fledgling ministry into a flourishing megachurch. Now, since then, New Birth has fallen on hard times. Ironically, Bishop Long, who built up the ministry, was also responsible for its downfall. The ministry was crushed by the weight of its financial scandals and sexual deviancy. It's funny how a man who preached masculinity, leadership, and integrity showed none of it. So the membership has fallen off. I'm not certain what the official numbers are, but they look to be less than a third of capacity. And so now that Jamal Bryant is the pastor, he wants to implement a gimmick, a patronizing, condescending marketing gimmick, based on negative stereotypes of who he thinks black men are. And I want to emphasize that point, because even though Jamal Bryant is a black male himself, He is a male feminist, a black misandrist.
You operate in the authority of God. Look at another sister around you. Tell them, it's not that I hate men. Come on, look at another sister. Say, I do not hate men. I just despise weak men. I despise cowardice men. I just ain't got time for men who are insecure about my gift. I'm not gonna dummy down because of what God got me. I don't have to lower my standard. That man gotta step all the way up to deal with a queen on my level. God, deliver our community from men who can't handle anointed women. I really thought y'all were gonna shout right through here. I said, deliver us from men who cannot handle anointed women.
In that regard, he's no different than Derrick Jackson, because he doesn't know who black men are. He's clueless as to who we are. That's why he doesn't have an issue talking down to us and speaking about us as if we're ignorant. So do you see the contrasts here? In the 1990s, the black church was about changing the philosophy of what they were preaching to get black men. But Bryant just wants to implement a marketing strategy. He's not going to change anything about what he preaches. Now getting back to my story. I eventually left Atlanta. I went back home to Detroit, but I continued to go to church for about 7 more years. And I still had friends who remained in Atlanta, who continued to go to New Birth, that I kept in touch with, and I continued to follow the ministry from afar. But as I continued to grow as a Christian and continued to study the Bible on my own, there was a huge shift in my mindset, because what I was seeing in Scripture was not aligning up with what was coming out of the pulpit. And I became a part of that huge exodus of black men who left the church. And I want you to understand something. I didn't leave the church because I had a falling out with God. I didn't leave the church because of church hurt. I left the church because the church left Scripture. So in 2008, I stopped going. And as of right now, I have 0 plans of ever returning. Now, I've made 4 videos on this topic as to why I think black men no longer attend church. I can't address everything I said in those videos, so I'll post the links here. But for me personally, it was the rise of that prosperity gospel, coupled with this overemphasis on women at the expense of men. All of the preaching that brought me and many other black men into the church in the 1990s went out the window. But getting back to Jamal Bryant's interview, again, he made no mention of that. This whole thing is a marketing issue to him. So in other words, that same BS that he and every other pastor in the black church has been preaching for the past 20 years, he'll continue preaching. But this time he's going to sprinkle some weed on it. And what an insult that is to black men. To think that we're so stupid that we'll sit through all this misandrist BS that comes out of his pulpit for a dime bag. Now, if he were anything but black, people would be calling him a racist. Black people wouldn't accept that from anyone else. But I'll say it. The man has no respect for black men.
Oh, sorry. Well, check this out, man. Don't come nowhere down here no more. Wherever PFK boom at, don't come. I know you can tell your henchman. I know you, yo, Tinity and all them. I know you before and seen right about all that. Get the henchman. Don't come down here no more. Boom, set. Me, as a man, the streets don't want you here. I'm speaking for them. So we see you here.
Okay. And I don't just want to isolate Jamal Bryant. This issue is widespread. Many black pastors operate the way that he does.
Yeah, I'm not scared no more, Linda Wilson. Because listen, if I'm a Jezebel, I'm God's kind, then I done got confused.
That's why, in my opinion, the church as we know it is done. Because unlike the 1990s, there is no effort from the leadership to invoke any type of real change. And just like the Nation of Islam 30 years ago was making inroads in the black community, today it's the black Hebrew Israelites. They're aggressively going after black men and they're succeeding. And it's not just the fact that they're winning black men that's important. Going back to what I said earlier, wherever men go, women and children follow. And that's why their numbers are exploding. All of this while the black church is content and pandering to old black women. Old black women who'll be dead in the next 2 decades. So if you like this video, Please give it a like and leave a comment in the comments section and share the link on your social media pages. And if you are new to my channel, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell. That way you'll get alerts every time I upload new content. This is the Layman's Journal. Thanks for stopping by. I'm out.